Our country experienced, as almost everyone knows, I'm sure, an insane act of violence earlier this week when somebody went off their rocker and lost their mind and attacked it happened to be a GOP. That was his opposition in his mind. A baseball practice for the annual congressional baseball game, which raises money for, I think, primarily children's charities in the Washington, D.C. area. And thank goodness no one was killed but this lunatic. But some people have been injured, and at least a couple of them pretty seriously. And we all know the story. Because the majority whip, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, attended the practice, his Capitol Police detachment assigned to his protection, because he's one of the main leaders of Congress, was there, and thank goodness they were there. And from every account I've heard, they responded with heroism and courage. And even though a couple of them got wounded, they kept the incident from being far, far worse. It's already as bad as it's already bad, but they kept it from being far, far worse. So then you bring that whole background into the political realm, and people are quick to try to blame the other side. Dems are, at least some Dems are criticizing the GOP, members of the GOP and pundits, or conservative pundits, are criticizing the Republic or the Democrats. And this whole idea or concept of inflammatory language is being turned into political theater and tried to take advantage of it from a political perspective. My opinion is that our leaders at the federal level, certainly, but at state level also, should be leading by setting a good example. And I think that goes beyond just refraining from inflammatory language and finger pointing and blame finding for political advantage. But I think it also extends, in my opinion, to specifically calling out contemporary statements and actions that come from pundits or just we regular citizens, and using the words and deeds of others, calling them out nationally, publicly, and clearly labeling them as the wrong thing to do or say. And I don't mean we have to specifically identify the source. I think we should very clearly share what was said or what was done, clearly and concisely. and then quickly follow that up with very clear and concise statement as to why it is wrong. Now, I'm not trying to limit free speech. I think people have a right to say, but I think it doesn't hurt to teach ourselves and teach the nation a better way. And one way to do that is leading by example. Another way to do that, which I think should be done also at the same time, is calling out inappropriate words, inappropriate behavior. Whether that comes from a pundit, whether that comes from a fellow politician, office holder, whether it comes from just a regular Joe Blow citizen, I think over time we could start to put this genie back in its bottle. So later today when I get home, not sure when that's going to be, I'm going to write emails to all my 3 representatives of Congress, my 2 senators, Senator Fisher and Senator Sass, and my member in the House, Representative Fortenberry. And I'm going to make some suggestions about how I would like to see Congress design and organize such a mechanism and such a process. I think if we said clearly, quote, here's what was said, give some contextual setting to it. Was it on Facebook? Was it on an extreme right-wing or extreme left-wing blog or website or news site, if you will, from either of the extremes? I don't necessarily think we have to identify the actual person or group that said it, although in some cases it's going to be fairly obvious. When Representative Steve King last couple days blamed President Obama, at least partially, for the division in the country, I think he should be called out for that. I don't think we need to be placing blame. I think we need to figure out where are we broken and how do we fix the brokenness. You know, when people point fingers at others, 3 or 4 of their own fingers are pointing back at themselves. That's a kind of an interesting observation that's decades and decades old, maybe older than that. You know, for those of you viewers and us that are Christians, you know, there's a pretty good guidance in the Bible, the Christian Bible. It's, take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. And the last thing I'd like to say is about my learnings that might be apropos. When I was growing up in the heartland of the country, I was taught that people in groups that attack or put down other people or groups, what they're really trying to do is falsely elevate themselves. And when they do that kind of stuff, they reveal more about their character than the character of those being attacked. I'd like to see more and more and more Americans adopting some of these teachings and joining in the calling out of inappropriate words, inappropriate behavior. Now the trick there is to try to do it without pointing fingers, right? Placing blame. But just to set some contemporary examples of how it continues. And that we each believe it's wrong, and that we urge all to practice best practices, if you will, better values. I think each of us as individuals has a responsibility. I think it's fairly generally accepted that leaders have a greater responsibility just because of their position. So I'd like to see Congress come up with a process where maybe once a week they take some samples of punditry, politicians, office holders, we general citizenry, what we've said recently or done recently, and call it out, label it wrong, explain why it's wrong, explain a better way, and continually challenge America to strive to be better in this regard. And I think it may even be more powerful if the Republicans in Congress limit their feedback to America, if you want to call it that, to their side of the aisle, conservatives or Republican organizations, etc. And Democrats similarly limit their monitoring and observation and feedback to liberal, their side of the aisle, what have you. So we end up maybe giving our own piece of America that feedback and that guidance and challenge to be better. I know people can probably find all kinds of issues and challenges. Who says that either or both sides will truly monitor and truly pick out outstanding examples from their own self-reporting type stuff. So maybe there's a way where we could open up for general input of ideas or examples to be considered and evaluated to the general public, honestly, but with cited, credible sources about things that were said, things that were done. As you can tell, I talk a lot. I think you get the idea. I think we can construct reasonable approach and rules to such a mechanism. I think that initial rollout may not be perfect, and there should be a mechanism where we review and adjust as beneficial to the goal. So, end of my long-winded dissertation. I apologize those of you who choose to watch and continue to watch these types of discussions from me. Will do so knowing that I sometimes draw a lot of words. Take care. Happy Father's Day. I'm just starting my ride. Woo-hoo! It is a gorgeous day here in southeast Nebraska. After storms Friday night, I think there were 4, 5, or 6 tornadoes in southeastern and northeastern Nebraska. Thank goodness there's no reports of injuries or deaths. There are some reports of property damage, significant property damage in some cases. We can't control Mother Nature. Although I won't go into a diatribe about climate change at this point. Maybe sometime in the future. Take care, all.